Welcome to Long Island Life and Politics This Week. I'm your co-publisher and co-host, John Zaher, and with me is my co-host and co-publisher, Steve Levy, former Suffolk County executive. Steve, it's been a big week in not only Suffolk County, Long Island, New York State, and national politics. First and foremost, the New York State legislature passed legislation allowing Suffolk County to have an additional 1/8 sales tax, and Suffolk County legislature is now considering this in order to fund sewer construction. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, the state gave authorization to the county to put up to referendum a vote for the public to decide whether or not they want to increase our sales tax once again by an additional 1/8%, which would bring us to 8.75%, one of the highest you'll find anywhere. And the purpose, they're saying, is to help construct sewers. And our point at our paper, we've editorialized that this is a terrible idea right now, not because we don't want sewers. We do. We're proponent of sewers. They can be very helpful from an environmental perspective and to allow for more affordable housing and important economic needs. But what was little known, and I think our paper deserves a lot of credit for exposing this, John, is that we found out Suffolk County, the government, is sitting on $700 million in reserves. And you say, where the heck did they come up with $700 million in reserves when just a few years ago, Suffolk was ranked as the most fiscally stressed county in all of New York State by the state controller, right?
Discussed it, probably should have filed for bankruptcy, did not file for bankruptcy. COVID occurs, gets all this money.
COVID, that was the key. Along comes COVID, which is terrible, debilitating. And you would figure, that with COVID, the towns and the counties would be bankrupt. They'd have no money with all the fiscal strains that comes with it. But the federal government passed these enormous spending bills. First in the Trump administration with the CARES Act, and then the Build Back Better program with President Biden after the economy was already rebounding when he took office. $6 trillion in spending, and where did it go? Billions and billions went to local governments. Suffolk got about $550 $1 million just in this aid. And then on top of that, John, you have to realize that the economy was on steroids because everyone was getting these checks in the mail, so they're going on Amazon and they're buying this and they're buying that. And the county experienced a remarkable 23% increase in 1 year in sales tax. So you combine that all together, they have $700 million.
Sure.
And so you're going to raise the sales tax when you have all that money there?
And what we've seen, not only at the county level, but also on the state level, is as a result of this COVID funds, the state budgets have increased. There's been no effort to trim those state budgets. Once government gets money, they continue to spend that money, and they want to keep on the increase in their revenue stream with this sales tax.
And here's the problem. They get this money as a one-shot from the feds, right? And now they spend it on recurring programs very often. And those recurring programs bring up your base. So now you have to spend this amount every year, but that revenue comes down a couple of years later. And you've got the deficit and the gaps. Right now, they're swimming in the money in Suffolk County, and they should be able to reserve some of that money for sewers, as well as looking at the current sales tax program. The people of Suffolk have been taxed $1 billion over the last few decades to buy open space, to protect our water. They've been very generous. You can reconfigure that present program to put more money into sewers without having to raise that tax again.
Sure. At some point, you're going to probably have purchased all the farmland you could, or at least bring it off that the farms are being preserved and the owners of the farms agree not to develop it in order to maintain them as farms. At some point, you'll have more money there too. But it's not that we oppose more sewer construction. We need it. We need it for economic development. We need it for additional housing, more affordable housing for young people especially. It's just the fact that we're almost at a 9% sales tax. Suffolk County residents have almost a 9% sales tax. They pay one among the highest property taxes in the country. They have state income taxes as well, federal taxes. You're a Suffolk County resident, you don't realize it, you probably could be paying someplace around 40 to 50% of your income in taxes.
Right. And, you want to keep young people here. You want to keep the elderly here. You want to keep the middle class here. stop raising their taxes to unfathomable, unsustainable levels. And when you have that kind of money in the bank, it just is counterintuitive to say we should raise taxes at the same time.
And the sales tax is probably the tax that people notice the least.
Right. And they figure, yeah, we'll just sneak that in. But it eats away at you. It does impact your discretionary income. And this is important too, John. The sales tax is regressive. It hits lower and middle income people the hardest. When you're a billionaire or a multimillionaire, paying another 1.25 doesn't matter on the pair of pants or the desk or the microphone. When you're paycheck to paycheck, that really does accumulate over the course of the year.
All right. Well, again, the Suffolk County Legislature is considering this, whether a referendum should go before the voters. We say no on this proposal. We also had our school district elections not that long ago. You wrote an article about other publications said that it wasn't as contested of elections this year. It didn't seem to have the uprising from parents as to what was being taught in their schools. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. My article and our article in the paper was a direct reaction to this one article in the daily paper on Long Island, which said, oh, things are quiet this year. It looks like things are settled as far as the issues in our schools. And I say far from it. I think people have been less volatile this year because, frankly, parents are scared. They're very scared to speak up. We issued an article, and people can go back to our May 12th issue. And if you click those links, it will blow your mind as to the content that is in some of these books in our school libraries. And I'm no prude. I believe you can buy whatever you want, say whatever you want, view whatever you want when you're an adult. But this is talking about age appropriateness. And there were, items that were purely pornographic within these books. And there was an effort by some residents to say, we're not saying ban a book. You can go buy a book as an adult, but you wouldn't put Hustler magazine in the school library, okay? And that's what this stuff was, basically. And they've been scared down because some of these newspapers call them white supremacists and right-wing wackos and book banners. They're not. They're just concerned parents. As we saw in Virginia, where people were coming down and complaining about some of the things that were happening within their schools, and then you see the Department of Justice investigating them as domestic terrorists. It's crazy. And it's being done by a certain segment of radicals in this country to chill the speech of average parents. So I think as time goes by, you're going to see these parent groups getting more strength in numbers, and they're going to be coming out and saying, we're not for banning books. Adults can see whatever they want, but there has to be proper, appropriate content for children.
Okay, very good. Well, another major topic that we've been witnessing is the influx of asylum seekers or undocumented migrants coming from through the borders, Mexico mostly, through to New York City, and then being transported to Suffolk County and other places as well. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm glad there are some elements within our government in some of the towns, and the Republican legislatures come out strong saying, we're going to hire counsel to try to fight back. But then you've got some others who are saying, oh, well, we're humanitarians and you should just allow anyone to come in whenever they want. And our point is, we're all for immigration. We're a nation that was founded on immigrants, and they've made our country great, and we want more immigrants. We just distinguish legal from illegal immigration. And so many in the far left media, and that's why it's so wonderful to have an alternative that people can go to in Long Island Life and Politics. We present the other side. You have to have a border if you're a country.
Yeah.
You have to have order. We have millions and millions of people patiently waiting online to come into the country, and then you have millions just cutting in line and saying, I'm here, I have to stay. Well, no, you have to come in the right way. But what's really disturbing now is the far left is changing the definition, where it was once an illegal alien, which everyone agreed, if you're here illegally, you're an illegal alien. Then they say, you can't say that. We'll just say they're undocumented individuals, immigrants, okay? We'll do that. Oh, you can't say that either. Then you just have to say migrant. But that wasn't enough. Now what they're doing is calling everybody coming over the border illegally as asylum seekers. Now, why do they do that, John? They do that because they try to impart legality to a person who's here illegally by just saying you're an asylum seeker. Well, you're illegal once you come over the border, but as soon as you say I'm seeking asylum, now you're a legal resident here that you can stay until your hearing comes around 10 years down the road. It's nonsense. We had the border under control just 2 years ago. We had the Remain in Mexico policy, which meant if you feel you're being exploited in your homeland, apply to us and we'll look at it. We'll let you in if we agree. If we don't, you can't. If you go from Venezuela to Mexico, you apply from Mexico. There's no reason for you to cross over the American line. But what's been happening, it's a game by the cottage industry and the cartels, and many on the far left in this open borders crowd here in this nation, to just bring them all in. President Biden himself said, we want a surge at the border. Well, you're getting your surge. And New York City, the sanctuary city, all right, you're a sanctuary city. Now live with it.
Yeah.
You asked them to come in. Don't say that, oh, we can't handle it now. We need Nassau. We need Suffolk to pick up the slack. We're not sanctuary cities. Well, though some in Suffolk tried to make it so. You guys said you wanted to be sanctuary city. This is your created problem. You fix the border. Don't just ask us to absorb everyone around the world who wants to come here. It's unsustainable.
Yeah, and we do need a national immigration policy. We do need reforms. Immigration policy should be a key part of national security policy, a key part of a country's wanting to attract people who are going to support its economy, help its economy, and to moderate the number of immigrants that will come in, because we have resources that we need to use for our own citizens, people here already. Same thing with Suffolk County. The more migrants you bring in, the less there is for education to go around to, because very oftentimes they'll settle predominantly in certain school districts, as well as social services and so forth. So it's important that immigration be legal and be moderated.
And controlled by us. Controlled by us, the citizens of America, not controlled by any one of the 8 billion people around the world who want to come here. Because I'll tell you, there was a Gallup poll that showed that, about 1 billion people around the world want to move out of their country and go to another place. And 20 to 35% of those people want to come to the United States. You're talking about a doubling of the U.S. population.
And with good reason, our economy, our freedoms, and so forth. But asylum is being used. That's right. But asylum is being used as the loophole in immigration law to get people to get their foot in the door. But it's for as long as for hundreds of years, arguably, Central and South America, which the United States has suffered under totalitarian regimes and poverty in their economies, and it's also, in my opinion, why try to strengthen the economy of China and other parts around the world? We should be always been trying to strengthen the economies of Mexico and Central America, so that all tides risen throughout the Western Hemisphere. So there's less of a desire for people to come to the United States, so they could build a stronger economy, a stronger country, and in their own countries, and maintain, and also as part of the U.S. policy, and it seemed to have gone away from this, to make sure or help to support democratic regimes in this country. The type of country you have, the type of political system matters.
Well, remember, NAFTA was supposed to do that, remember?
Sure.
NAFTA was going to be the thing that lifted the standards of living in the Latin American countries, and that would stifle immigration here. It didn't. Look, there's always been poverty there. There's poverty now. There's probably going to be poverty there and elsewhere around the world, even in the United States, for decades to come. So the question is the fact that someone's impoverished in another nation, is that ipso facto the rationale that you are now allowed to come over? If that's the case, you've got to do that for billions of people around the world. Same thing with the totalitarian nature of many of these places. They are horrible, and we want to be welcoming and opening and humanitarians and allowing those that we can bring in, but we have to be able to control the numbers.
And why are we becoming the so-called escape hatch for these countries? If local residents stayed in their countries and potentially took action to replace their governments and improve their standard of livings, then that would probably benefit everybody.
Right, but 90% are coming because they know they can make more money here,
Sure.
and they're sending it back to the homeland. So we know it's for economic reasons.
And we have a strong economy, low unemployment.
Right.
We need more legal immigration for sure. That's probably the biggest
agree to that.
malpractice of Congress in the last 20 years.
And what's disgraceful about the mainstream media, which we are not, we are the alternative for those folks out there who are sick and tired of the mainstream media deliberately blurring the distinction between legal and illegal immigration. And in fact, Newsday just had an editorial today or yesterday noting how, a study came out and showed how immigrants are so important for our country. Well, duh, who's saying they're not? Well, those who are trying to control illegal immigration are not saying immigrants are not welcome and they're not good for the country, but they make no distinction in that study or in that article about who's coming in legally and who's coming in illegally. That's the first thing you have to address.
And for our viewers and listeners who don't remember, you have a long history of being consistent on this issue. As a county executive, you took action to crack down on workers who were not here legally because they were taking jobs away from U.S. citizens and local residents.
Wages. And here's the worst part. You had these companies, these contractors, right? They were trying to do the right thing, right? They want to pay their workers comp. They want to pay health benefits. They want to give them a decent wage. And they'd come to me and they said, look, I'm trying, but this other guy, my competitor, he's driving up to the 7-Eleven and he's picking up people who are not here legally and he's paying them off the books without workers comp and health care. Do something about it. Say, you're absolutely right. I'm going to try to do something about it. And you would not believe the pushback that I got and those like me got from the mainstream media, from the far left who said, you're being xenophobic, you're being anti-immigrant. No, I'm trying to support the rule of law.
You're trying to,
and
that's your job.
Wages and benefits for people who are doing it the right.
As chief executive of Suffolk County, you're doing your job.
Right.
Congress was not doing its job to increase legal immigration as needed, but you do.
Too hard to get here legally, too easy to get here illegally.
Sure,
That's the problem.
That's true. Good point. All right, so let's move on. We also have seen some action by the IDA, the Industrial Development Associations or agencies for both Nassau and Suffolk County. Nassau County considering tax breaks for the Sands Casino, and Suffolk County giving tax breaks for a 55 and over community. I thought that IDA funds were supposed to create jobs. And also, I thought that everyone wanted to build a casino in Nassau County. Why do they need an extra incentive?
Well, that's what we said. I'm also serve as the executive director of the Center for Cost-Effective Government, and that was our point of view. And that article was issued in Long Island Life and Politics to say, wait a minute, do we really need to be giving a tax incentive for a casino to come to Long Island? Number one, casino is like the only business in the world where you're guaranteed to make money, unless it's the government running it, of course. But if it's a private entity coming in, you're going to make money, so you don't need to be incentivized. And two, they were going to come anyway. So why are we giving them a tax break? It's very, we had another situation where Suffolk County IDA gave a tax break to a senior citizen complex. Now, there are applications this high of developers who want approval for their senior citizen complex or their other housing complex. They don't need to be incentivized to build it. They just need the local government to say, yes, you can build it. So why we have to say, okay, yes, you can build it. And by the way, you don't have to pay taxes for 10 years. What is the point of that?
And taxes that they don't pay is taxes that others are going to have to pay, whether it's going to be property taxes to support local schools or county taxes as well. So somebody pays. When they get tax breaks, somebody pays.
But just to make the point, the IDAs are great when they give incentives to lure in businesses that create good, high-paying jobs, which wouldn't come anyway. And a perfect example, Computer Associates back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, they brought in 3,000 great jobs. That was a tax you got worth it. When I was county executive, I brought in Canon to put their Hemisphere headquarters right in Melville. 2,000 jobs, really high paying. That was a tax break worth it. A warehouse, a car wash, a casino, give me a break.
Yeah, the warehouse creates one job.
Right.
But what we've had developed though, these IDAs have become almost a cottage industry. You hire the lawyers, they get their fees. They will get you this abatement on mortgage tax and property taxes, so the owner's happy. Everyone's happy except for the taxpayer.
Right. It's a well-intentioned program that can be a good program if it stays true to its original purpose. And unfortunately, we're seeing them go way off track. And this is one case where we actually agree with the Newsday editorial board. They've been saying the same thing, and I commend them for that. But they've got to be reined in, because they're just giving these things out like lollipops. And like you said so astutely, John, when they get that tax break, everybody else is making up the difference.
Absolutely. There's also some discussion in the last week. We dealt with the local air quality as a result of the Quebec fires. You had some thoughts, or we had written on this?
Yeah, everybody saw that orange sky, and it was really scary. And the first thing that the far, far left does is say, there you go, we told you so, global warming, right? And the climate change, it's causing this. Well, not really, okay? Number one, the West Coast has been dealing with this for many, many years. But why? Why all of a sudden? It's because the climate is changing? No, it's not happening worldwide. It's happening in the places where they stop their proper forest management. And for the longest time, governments and outdoors people and conservationists, they would do select burns and cull the forest and the thick brush from the dead wood. You'd actually do a controlled burn. So if something does catch in a very high, dry scenario, it'll catch, but it will stop because you'll have breaks in the forest. The radical environmentalists stop this because they're saying you should never do these clearings. No one should disturb the natural state. Well, what you get as a result? You're getting all these massive wildfires. If they just went back to the proper management that they had before, you'd never totally eliminate them, but you wouldn't have these type of huge fires.
Thank you for joining Long Island Life and Politics this week. I'm your co-host, John Zaher, and with me has been my co-host, Steve Levy. Thank you and have a great week.